Activists panic now, begging big companies to stop canceling their DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at companies have not been doing so well lately. From CNBC, civil rights groups call on Fortune 1000 companies to stop abandoning DEI. 20 civil rights groups got together and signed a letter calling for Fortune 1000 company CEOs and their board members to defend diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. This is all while major companies are already dumping DEI. They're also still getting sued for illegal DEI trainings, discrimination in the workplace, and they're getting together and they're saying, hey, could you please help us out because we're pretty much getting eviscerated. Congress's Black Caucus also tried to help out recently. From the Associated Press, Black Caucus issues new guidelines for DEI policies and urges firms to help reduce racial wealth gap. Sure, why not? Yeah, just take your company and use your company to change racial balances of personal wealth. You could just do that at a company because you have authority, right? It's as if these activists, it's not just that they have a sense of entitlement, but they have like no business background because when things are going well, you can ask for a lot of extra things. When business is going well, you can ask for extra things. When your movement is going well, you can rely on that momentum and get even more than you ever asked for, and people will just go along with it. But now the economy is not doing well. These businesses are getting sued for their DEI discriminatory practices, so they just can't continue this way, even if they wanted to continue this way. And this is just out. Robbie Starbuck got another big win. Weeks ago, he began communicating with executives at Caterpillar to let them know that he was planning to expose their woke policies. Today, they're making preemptive changes, he says. No more woke trainings, no donations to divisive events. They will not participate in the HRC's Woke Corporate Equality Index social credit systems. And all sponsorship, speakers, donations, and events must be approved at the executive level to ensure that nothing is divisive or politically charged. So if you're one of these activists, isn't it time to just surrender and say, look, what do you suggest, Robbie? Can we just work together? But they don't have the expertise or intelligence to do that. 20 civil rights organizations signed a letter calling for Fortune 1000 companies and board members to defend diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. Signers include the Failing Human Rights Campaign, GLAAD, Gleason, National Urban League, National Women's Law Center, SAGE, and others. The letter comes after companies including Ford, Tractor Supply, Harley-Davidson, John Deere, and more, and now Caterpillar, curbed their DEI efforts. The call to action comes after businesses including Ford and Tractor Supply and Brown-Forman announced plans to change or entirely end internal DEI initiatives. Quote, abandoning DEI will have long-term consequences on business success, the authors of the letter wrote. Ultimately shirking fiduciary responsibility to employees, consumers, and shareholders. And how would they be shirking their responsibility to all their stakeholders that include employees, customers, and even their shareholders? Of course they're not. There's no explanation for that. And their letter is written like a bad 8th grade essay. Well, these short-sighted decisions make our workplaces less safe and less inclusive for hardworking Americans. Legal experts saw the Supreme Court's June 2023 ruling on affirmative action in higher education as a roadmap for targeting private corporations, prioritizing employee, supplier, and consumer diversity. Unfairly treating employees, not allowing employees to either be hired or get promotions unless they had a certain skin color, they were a certain race, a certain gender, or had certain personal sexual preferences. And that's how they prioritized their employees. Their suppliers as well. They wouldn't give work to vendors, to people that could supply the company appropriately and properly, unless they had a certain skin color, or were a certain gender, or had a certain sexual preference. While some right-wing activists have claimed credit for pressuring companies on social media into making the changes in recent weeks, several corporations have said changes have been in the works since March. Of course, they're not telling the truth. It's very easy to check that. Even Bloomberg, the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal have done articles talking about how Robbie Starbuck is bringing these people to heel, getting them under control, making them follow the law. Rural retailer Tractor Supply started a trend specifically by severing ties with LGBT advocacy group the Human Rights Campaign, also known as HRC, which is among the letter's signatories. HRC is one of the worst. They're the ones that give a social credit ranking, a numerical score to companies to tell them you're being woke enough, you're not being woke enough, to tell them what they should do to behave, how they can earn more points. They actually have a list of what companies could and should be doing according to their rules of how they should treat their employees. Does that make any sense? No, it really doesn't make any sense. It's completely impractical. It creates friction within an organization, divisiveness within an organization. It's completely inappropriate. Several companies, including Molson Coors, Harley-Davidson, Ford, and Lowe's, all followed suit. They said they will no longer provide data to the nonprofit's Corporate Equality Index, a traditionally respected barometer for which companies best meet the needs of the LGBT community. HRC President Kelly Robinson told CNBC's Squawk Box show on September 12th that there's a strong business case for diversity in the workplace. Do you think they can make the business case for diversity in the workplace? They can't. And it's, from a business standpoint, that's offensive. It's a lie. I understand they're trying to do a hustle and they're trying to make money for themselves and they're trying to get a political constituency, but it really is offensive that it is a lie to businesses. And beyond that, of course, affecting people in the workplace like this, discriminating against people in the workplace like this is also really horrendous. But it's just so inappropriate to try to abuse power in businesses and to tell them things that you know are not true, or that you're just saying that you could care less if they're true or not. Well, consumers are 2 times more likely to want to buy from brands that support the community, said Robinson. Yeah, that worked really well for Bud Light. It worked really well for Target as well. Do a lot more of that. Obviously, companies are not this stupid to buy into this nonsense. Well, this is bottom line the best thing to do for businesses. And that's why I think that we're seeing so much energy from employees, from consumers, and from shareholders starting to push back on these decisions. Yeah, there's a lot of energy. You can really feel that energy. The energy is all astroturf nonsense, like the rest of this woke political ideology. She emphasized that LGBT consumers have $1.4 trillion of buying power, as reported by the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, so you know it's legitimate. Robinson called moving away from DEI the wrong decision for business. The HRC responded to the companies that rolled back DEI commitments by cutting their Corporate Equality Index scores by 25 points. And obviously, these big companies don't care anymore about their little Corporate Equality Index scores. Incidentally, I reduced the score myself of the Corporate Equality Index by 11 points, but today I think I'm going to take it down another 42 points because I don't like the tone of what they're trying to do. On a 100-point scale, that deduction brings Brown-Forman, the makers of Jack Daniels, Lowe's, Ford, and Molson Coors from a perfect score of 100 to 75. Tractor Supply and John Deere fall from 95 to 70, and Harley-Davidson's Corporate Equality Index score drops from 45 to 20. How will Harley-Davidson ever recover? The companies mentioned in this article did not immediately respond to requests for comment. And that's what they've been doing. They've been saying essentially like, if we put out a memo or if you have an internal email, that's our policy. So you can read that and we've got really nothing else to say because we're done. In the letter to the Fortune 1000 companies, the civil rights groups argued pulling back from DEI not only hurts their standing with consumers, but also risks their ability to keep the most talented workforce possible. Now, these are activists. The activists cannot function. These are not professional people for the most part. They may have law degrees. They may have other professional credentials. Perhaps they even earned those credentials. In many cases, they did not. But the activists just say completely silly things. And corporate people look at this and they say, don't tell me this is going to reduce the quality of my workforce. I know who I've been hiring. As we run our businesses, we certainly know who the moneymakers are and who the people are that we don't have to worry about. And we also know who the troublemakers are, and we know who the incapable people are that for one reason or another we haven't gotten rid of yet. They continue, quote, businesses that fail to include women, people of color, people with disabilities, and LGBT people neglect their financial duty to recruit and retain top talent, the letter said. We call on business leaders to speak out publicly, defending decades-long pro-business decisions to support inclusion. Even Time magazine is saying DEI isn't working, and now they're proposing inclusive economics. Probably also ridiculous, but they're admitting it. DEI isn't working. Companies know it does not work. The New York Times, DEI is not working on college campuses. We need a new approach. Everyone knows it's not working. It's never worked. The issue isn't whether or not it's working. The issue is now people aren't afraid to say, hey, this is stupid. It's not working, and we're not going to keep doing it. From their 8th grade book report. Also known as the full text of their letter, begging companies to keep DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, policies, and practices make business sense, and they're broadly popular among the public, consumers, and employees, despite all of the evidence to the contrary. They continue. But a small, well-funded, and extreme group of right-wing activists is attempting to pressure companies into abandoning their DEI programs. Recently, some CEOs have caved and announced their company's divestments from diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. These capitulations weaken businesses and the American economy more broadly. And these short-sighted decisions make our workplaces less safe and less inclusive for hardworking Americans. Meanwhile, this exposes businesses to legal risk by increasing the likelihood of bias and discrimination within organizations. How would this increase the legal risk? I mean, every sentence is nonsensical, but this in particular, no, you're not going to get sued for bias because you're not being biased against your employees. You're not going to get sued for discriminating against people because you don't give people who don't deserve a promotion. The work will speak to what they deserve to get, not their skin color, not their gender, not their sexual preferences, not even their religious affiliations. Abandoning DEI will have long-term consequences to business success, ultimately shirking fiduciary responsibility to employees, consumers, and shareholders. A survey of 1,000 companies with at least $15 billion in annual revenue showed that companies at the top quartile for both gender and ethnic diversity are 12% more likely to outperform all other companies. If you've ever run a business, whether it's a one-person business or a 1,000-person business, or you've worked at a company, even if you just worked on the weekends, or you worked after school, you know that the skin color and the ethnic diversity of the people you're working with has nothing to do with whether or not things are going to go well for you or for the business. It has to do with the work that people actually do. The fact that also that people have certain personal skills, certain personal passions and abilities are in the right job at the right company. That's what the focus always is and has to be productive, for a company to do well, and for you to do well in your company. Skin color, diversity, sexual preference is not going to help. They continue. There is also a penalty for lagging on diversity, which has only gotten larger with time. Companies in the bottom quartile of executive diversity on gender and ethnicity underperform all other companies by 27%. Critically, these decisions are not supported by your employees. According to an Edelman survey in 2024, 60% of people say an inclusive work culture with a well-supported diversity program is critical to attracting and retaining them as an employee. That's up 9 points from 2022. You know what's interesting about that is for all these companies that are canceling their DEI programs and not reporting their internal activities to the Corporate Equality Index for the HRC people, has Lowe's or Harley-Davidson or Caterpillar or John Deere, have any of them noticed that their employees are now fleeing and going to work somewhere else because they're not woke enough? I don't think so. If they had been, they could have put some of that in their little 8th grade essay. And it would have helped because at least they would have had some relevant examples. They continue. Furthermore, divestment from DEI will alienate diverse consumer segments, including women, people of color, people with disabilities, and the LGBT community. Women control an estimated 2/3 of global consumer spending and are projected to control 2/3 of all consumer wealth within the next decade, with estimates ranging from $12 trillion to $40 trillion. Today, Black consumers hold $1.7 trillion in purchasing power, and the LGBT community wields $1.4 trillion in spending power. Yeah, all of that, of course, makes no difference. If they can point to any specific examples that, sure, since this one company got rid of their DEI programs, women came out publicly and said, yes, we're not buying from those companies anymore. And look how badly their stocks are doing. You got to have some real examples. Throwing out these numbers also means nothing. Executives also don't like to see numbers like this. You show us things like this and we tell you, look, we don't need to know how big the market is. We need to know exact examples of you did this and then this happened. If you can't show cause and effect, you're just wasting everyone's time. And they go on to list even more meaningless stats. When values of diversity, equity, and inclusion are tested by politically motivated anti-business forces, CEOs and corporate board members must defend them unequivocally. To be clear, women workers, people of color, and disabled workers aren't making political statements when they show up to work and ask for equal policies, benefits, and treatment. And they wrap it all up like this. We welcome your partnership and understand the safety risks posed by bad actors are serious. These are threats that impact us all. Backing down from long-standing commitments only serves to empower those who threaten your workers and customers. We call on business leaders to speak out publicly, defending decades-long pro-business decisions to support inclusion. Your trusted voices together will future-proof the business community against anti-business, politically motivated extremists. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is on its way out at businesses. Everyone knew it was always just political. It was always nonsense. It would never work long-term, except for the people that were lied to, who were fooled into taking positions they were never qualified for, which is bad for the company, but it's even worse for the individual because you will fail at your company. You know, you could learn skills at an entry-level position if you can earn an entry-level position and then do better and then move to a higher level based on what you actually do. You have a sense of dignity when you earn what you get. And an entry-level position doesn't mean minimum wage. Sometimes it's an entry-level management position. It just depends on what you're qualified for. You never want people to just give you an unfair chance. It's good to get a chance, but you should earn it. And if you do get the chance, you have to apply yourself. The executives that were forced into this diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense, and the political actors that wanted to push diversity, equity, and inclusion as well, knew what they were doing was wrong. Some people thought they'd get away with it, but a lot of people knew better because this thing was never designed to work. It was designed to fail and to be a tax on the system, but at least they would have political actors inside all their companies. They do the same thing in communist China with the Communist Party. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.